This book is an invitation to a journey into the unknown about UFO files past and present, with many phenomena and coincidences unexplained to this day. I wanted to make this collection of temporal events that begins with the famous writer Herbert George Wells, who laid the foundations of our current technological society through his science fiction writings and novels. But in writing this book, after years of collecting seemingly unrelated events, I now believe that this quest for the unknown must have begun long before the 19th century, and perhaps even at the beginning of mankind, and that we are certainly not alone. Many of us have experienced visions, out-of-body experiences, thought transmissions, prescience, seen improbable objects, flying saucers, inexplicable phenomena, lived extraordinary experiences. But was it really our imagination? Is it in our DNA? Is it a form of communication? Who knows? The only question to ask ourselves when we look at our planet, which is tearing itself apart, and where there is always a war between peoples, and are we ready? Myth or reality? From your own opinion. 1913, the nuclear lights. The year 1913 remains engraved in the annals of history as a pivotal period, at the crossroads between the Belle Epoque and the beginnings of global chaos. In the midst of this tumultuous era, visionary author Herbert George Wells unveiled his mysterious opus, The Liberating Destruction. This work, often relegated to the status of a simple science fiction novel, turned out to be much more than a simple escapade into the imagination of H.G. Wells. As one plunges into the yellowing pages of this book, an enigma emerges, an enigma linking the depths of fiction to the arcana of science. At the time, radium, discovered by Marie and Pierre Curie, held an undeniable fascination for the collective imagination. Would a contemporary physics book dealing with this radioactive substance, whose effects and deadly yet bewitching glow intrigued as much as it frightened, have played the role of muse for H.G. Wells? Some historians suggest that the author had access to cutting-edge scientific knowledge. The vivid descriptions of the destructive power of radium in Liberating Destruction suggest a deep knowledge of the discoveries of the time. This link between H.G. Wells' fiction and scientific advances raises questions about the nature of creativity and artistic inspiration at a time when the boundary between dream and reality seemed blurred. However, the plot thickens as we explore the possible ramifications of this connection. Some researchers put forward the bold idea that H.G. Wells' apocalyptic tale may have indirectly influenced the development of nuclear weapons. As geopolitical tensions intensified, governments invested heavily in scientific research, exploring the limits of knowledge to ensure their strategic superiority. In this tense atmosphere, could the ideas put forward by H.G. Wells have infiltrated the corridors of the most secret laboratories? Some claim that the literary work's concepts of mass destruction and liberation may have permeated the minds of scientists involved in sensitive projects. In this way, the boundary between H.G. Wells' fiction and the reality of the nuclear age becomes blurred, revealing a complex tangle between art, science, and politics. This story sets out to explore these seemingly unlikely but potentially influential connections in greater depth. From the imaginative pen of H.G. Wells to the most confidential nuclear laboratories, this quest takes us on a captivating journey through an era when ideas, whether born of imagination or scientific research, shaped history in unexpected ways. 1932, nuclear interactions. In 1932, a remarkable synchronicity occurred, shaping the destiny of physics and laying the foundations for a new era. Leo Szilard, a renowned Hungarian physicist, plunged into reading a book that would resonate in astonishing ways with the scientific discoveries underway. That year, marked by the discovery of a neutron, was to prove crucial for the evolution of human understanding of the atomic nucleus and, eventually, for the fate of humanity itself. The book that captivated Leo Szilard was the provocative Liberating Destruction by Herbert George Wells. In 1932, the Hungarian physicist, already immersed in the pioneering work of nuclear physics, found in the pages of H.G. Wells a disturbing resonance with the scientific advances underway. It was the same year that James Chadwick discovered the neutron, a neutral subatomic particle that was to play a key role in future nuclear advances. Leo Szilard, already immersed in the mysteries of nuclear physics, discovered in The Liberating Destruction a prefigurative vision of the power locked up in the atomic nucleus. H.G. Wells' tales of liberating mass destruction resonated strangely with the energy-releasing possibilities of the neutron. The physicist, stimulated by this convergence between fiction and reality, began to weave conceptual links between H.G. Wells' literary ideas and recent scientific developments. This convergence of fiction and scientific reality fueled Leo Szilard's creative spirit. The idea of releasing energy from the atomic nucleus, which had once seemed a bold speculation of science fiction, now took on a more concrete form in the physicist's mind. The concepts addressed by H.G. Wells were blending with the reality of nuclear advances, forging a connection between the fiction of 1913 and the scientific developments of 1932. This pivotal period marked the beginning of an era in which science fiction and scientific reality were inextricably intertwined. Leo Szilard, guided by the literary vision of H.G. Wells, became one of the key architects of future developments in the nuclear field. The ideas sown by H.G. Wells, fertilized by the scientific discoveries of the time, germinated in the minds of researchers, shaping the path to a complex and controversial nuclear age. This chapter explores the chance encounter between the fiction of H.G. Wells and the scientific advances of 1932 through the prism of Leo Szilard's visionary mind. From a stimulating reading of a dystopian novel to the revelation of a nuclear reality in the making, this pivotal period highlights how literary creativity can influence and interact with scientific progress, defining the course of history and transforming literary ambitions into nuclear realities. 1933 Nuclear Sparks. Amid the whirlwinds of creative thought and scientific advances, 1933 emerges as a time when Leo Szilard's ideas take on a concrete dimension. While the reading of Herbert George Wells' The Liberating Destruction and the discovery of a neutron in 1932 had already catalyzed Leo Szilard's imagination, it was in 1933 that these initial sparks were transformed into radical scientific enlightenment. Guided by the vision of releasing the energy of the atomic nucleus, Leo Szilard formulated the idea of the chain reaction. This innovative notion was based on the idea that the fission of one atomic nucleus could trigger the fission of other nuclei, creating a self-sustaining reaction. The mental image of this chain reaction, where each atomic division feeds the next, captured Leo Szilard's mind and heralded an era of unprecedented discoveries and challenges. In 1933, Leo Szilard laid the foundations for this idea in a paper entitled On the Stabilization of a Chain Reaction. He outlined the theoretical principles of a reaction in which the fission of one atomic nucleus would trigger the fission of other nuclei, creating a self-sustaining reaction and releasing a prodigious amount of energy. This revolutionary concept marked the start of a new and potentially dangerous exploration of the forces buried at the heart of matter. However, Leo Szilard was not simply a theoretical thinker. Aware of the revolutionary potential of his idea, he took action by registering patents in 1934. These patents were much more than a legal formality. They represented an affirmation of Leo Szilard's vision in the tangible world of technological innovation. This gesture anticipated the potential impact of the chain reaction on science, technology, and society, unveiling a future where nuclear energy could be harnessed and used in a controlled manner. This chapter takes us through the complex intellectual process that led to the conception of chain reaction, from Leo Szilard's initial fascination with H.G. Wells' fiction in 1932 to the crystallization of his revolutionary ideas in 1933. We explore the pages of his writings, revealing the nuances of his thinking and the profound implications of chain reaction for science, technology, and society. The evolution of Leo Szilard's idea, born of the collision between literary imagination and scientific quest, represents a captivating chapter in which human creativity transcends the boundaries between the possible and the unimaginable. 1933, Hanabi UND Flugzeug Project. The rocket plane and Class V missiles. At the heart of the darkest secrets of the Second World War lie extraordinary projects developed in secret by German military firms. Far beyond the formidable tanks and high-performance fighters, a secret unit, the SSE-4 office, supervised by SS Himmler from 1933 onwards, worked in the shadows to design revolutionary weapons. Among these projects, the Virgil-Tungswaffen ballistic missiles, capable of reaching targets over 300 kilometers away, marked a significant step forward. However, the ambitions of this office were not limited to conventional weapons. Under its aegis, creativity ran riot, giving rise to such unusual machines as the Landkreuzer P. 1000 Rat, a 1,000-ton land cruiser. But it was in the field of aeronautics that Nazi scientists demonstrated their unbridled imagination. Among the most audacious projects, the AR-555 jet-powered flying wing from the Arado firm stood out. Designed to reach the U.S. East Coast, this aircraft was intended to pound the area with a 4,000-ton bomb load, even an atomic bomb. On December 28, 1944, the Reich Air Ministry abruptly shelved the project, but laid the foundations for the future B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, whose maiden flight took place on July 17, 1989. However, the fascination with advanced technology was not limited to conventional machines. In the early 30s, research into Jenseits Flugmaschinen, flying machines beyond, was given new impetus by the recruitment of physicists, including Dr. Victor Schauberger. The Vril Glocke project, based in the mountainous regions of Lower Silesia and Czechoslovakia, aimed to harness an anti-gravitational energy source to achieve hovering flight. Egg-shaped prototypes, such as the RFZ-6 V7, began to appear. Richard Meath, the inventor of this device measuring 3m20 in height and 14m40 in diameter, emigrated to the USA in 1945. In 1953, he revealed to the general public in the German daily Die Welt, "If they're flying discs in the sky, I can claim that they were built in Germany, developed under my orders, and probably mass-produced by the Russians or the Americans." The Andromeda Project remains one of the most impressive ever envisaged by the scientists of the Third Reich. Conceived as a giant vessel 120 meters in diameter, this fortress was to serve as the mothership for the Vril and Hanabi saucers. Although this immense construction never took shape, it remains an extravagant testament to the audacity of Schutzstaffel E4 researchers. These stories, based on confidential SS files discovered in the archives of the Soviet Union, still maintain the mystery surrounding these titanic projects. The hunt for Nazi technology, which began at the end of the war, continues to generate speculation, fueling the UFO myth that lives on in our minds. 1939, the shadow of the Uranium Project. The year 1939 marked a crucial turning point as the world plunged inexorably into the abyss of the Second World War. Against this backdrop of impending conflict, Nazi Germany, under the Third Reich, decided to explore the destructive potential of nuclear energy by launching the Uranium Project. At the head of this enterprise was Kurt Diebner, an eminent physicist who was to become a key figure in the nuclear history of the Second World War. The Uranium Project, shrouded in secrecy and mystery, crystallizes Germany's effort to exploit advances in nuclear physics for military purposes. Under Diebner's leadership, the team of scientists embarked on research into nuclear fission, seeking to understand the mechanisms that could unleash colossal power. The ambition of the project was immense. The Nazis, aware of the scientific developments of the time, envisaged the possibility of creating a revolutionary weapon based on the principles of nuclear fission. It was in the German laboratories that the shadow of a new era loomed, in which the power of atoms became a trump card in the game of war. Kurt Diebner, as director of the Uranium Project, becomes the face of this scientific and military quest. His role in this enterprise highlights how science, often seen as an instrument of progress, can be hijacked to serve far darker purposes. Diebner, a brilliant physicist, finds himself drawn into a frantic race where the line between fundamental research and military application becomes dangerously blurred. However, the precise details of the Uranium Project remain shrouded in mystery. Historians and researchers find it difficult to discern the true extent of the progress made by German scientists. Speculation persists as to the technical feasibility and Nazi Germany's proximity to the realization of an atomic bomb. Some suggest that internal and external obstacles hamper the project, while others believe that the Nazis may have been closer to success than previously thought. This period plunges us into the nuances of the Uranium Project, exploring the ambitions, challenges, and ethical consequences of a quest that would redefine the rules of warfare. It sheds light on how scientific developments, often motivated by pure curiosity, can be hijacked for far more sinister purposes in times of conflict. It is in the shadows of these laboratories that the premises of an uncertain future are formed, where nuclear physics is transformed into a potentially devastating weapon, forever altering the balance of global power. 1939, the equation of war. The year 1939 marked the beginning of a chapter of unprecedented scope in human history. Scientific and political minds, imbued with an anguished awareness of the devastating possibilities of nuclear energy, were about to redefine the very nature of war. At the heart of this revolution was Albert Einstein, the icon of theoretical physics, whose equation E equals mc was to take on an unexpected and sinister significance. Albert Einstein, a German exile turned American citizen, had fled the Nazi regime and taken refuge in the United States. As the world collapsed in the early stages of the Second World War, the physicist, aware of the potential implications of his own discoveries, foresaw the danger inherent in the military manipulation of nuclear energy. It was in this atmosphere of fear and anticipation that Albert Einstein penned his famous Einstein letter to President Franklin D. Roosevelt in August 1939. This correspondence, warning of the risk of the Germans developing an atomic weapon, prompted the United States to initiate the Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project, initially designed to coordinate nuclear research, soon evolved into a colossal secret effort to create the first atomic bomb. Although Albert Einstein was not directly involved in the research, his symbolic involvement was undeniable. His letter had triggered a project that would change the dynamics of the world, and his famous equation became the mantra of the new era. The chapter delves into the moral duality that weighed on Albert Einstein. On the one hand, he was the scientist whose work had paved the way for a source of extraordinary power. On the other, he was a humanist concerned about the consequences of this power when used for mass destruction. This personal dilemma highlights the ethical issues that arise when science finds itself at the forefront of a global conflict. Exploration continues behind the scenes of the Manhattan Project. Laboratories are abuzz with frenetic activity as brilliant physics minds such as Robert Oppenheimer and Enrico Fermi direct crucial research. The narrative exposes the race against time that ensues as the United States embarks on a frantic competition with Germany to create the first atomic bomb. Albert Einstein's role as both catalyst and observer is explored in the context of this monumental project. His voice, though symbolic, becomes an echo of the ethical dilemmas tormenting the protagonists of the Manhattan Project. This chapter offers a detailed look at this crucial period, when theoretical physics was transformed into a practical force that would shape the course of history.